Okay, this is the revised version of the compute variable video, and if you happen to watch my original video, just note that the two things we are doing differently in this video is we are going to make sure to recode our variables before we compute our new construct, and we are also going to leave our decimals as they are at the hundredths place, because when we average two numbers together, we often will get a value that is not an integer. All right, so let's say we're looking at the relationship between marital status and misogyny. We want to know, for those who are more misogynistic, perhaps they're more likely to divorce, or maybe they're more likely to be married. So when we look at the construct or variable of marital status, we have a variable that already represents that. But what we don't have is a variable that represents misogyny. However, if we look through our list, we did find a couple variables, when taken together, perhaps better represent our interest, our construct of interest, which is misogyny. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the values column here, and we'll see that we have a 1 representing agree strongly and a 4 representing strongly disagree. And if we look at our other variable, we have the same thing. Now it's important to note that these are the same, and because they're the same, we can combine them without doing an extra step of standardizing these variables. So if they're different, that's something we'll have to do, and that's something we'll go over in a future video. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to recode both of these variables so that instead of a 1 representing strongly agree and a 4 representing strongly disagree, we're going to have a 1 representing strongly disagree and a 4 representing strongly agree. So we're just going to reverse these, and we're going to have the higher number representing a greater degree of agreeing with the statement. And I'll explain why we're doing that a little bit when we're actually computing the variable. So the first thing we're going to do is go up to transform, recode into different variables. We're going to find our variables of interest and drag them both over. And like I said, we're going to have a 4 representing a 1, all the way down to a 1 representing a 1 representing a 4. All right, and once again, what we're doing is we're having a 1 now represent strongly disagree, and a 4 represent strongly agree after we recode these variables. So we might recode these men political, and we might want to let ourselves know that that is a variable that represents a variable that's recoded. So it's something we did, it's not a original variable. And we'll do the same to our second variable. All right, so we click change. These both look good, so we're going to go ahead and complete the recode. And just as a quick check, we're going to go over to our data view and see that we accomplished what we set out to accomplish. And indeed, it looks like we did. We now have our 4s represented as 1s, our 3s represented as 2s, and so on and so forth. Our 1's represented as 4's. Okay, so it looks good. So what we want to do next is actually create our new construct. We're interested in misogyny. So we are going to combine our two variables of interest. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to transform, and we are going to click compute variable, and we want to average these variables. And we do that by adding them together and dividing them by the number of variables we have, in this case 2. And we're going to just name this misogyny. And one thing I'm going to do here is, this is just a good reminder for me, is we're going to put in the lowest value, and we're going to let ourselves know that represents no misogyny or little misogyny. And a 4, which is the highest value we can have. And we'll just label that high misogyny. Now, I'm going to take this moment to go into why we ended up recoding those variables originally. If we hadn't recoded those variables, then we would have a 4 representing a 4 representing our smallest degree of misogyny, and a 1 representing our highest degree of misogyny. Now, when we create a new construct, what we generally want to do is have higher values represent a higher degree of our construct. So in this case, we want the highest values we have to represent the highest degree of misogyny, and we want the lowest values we have to represent the smallest degree of misogyny. So that's why we recoded those variables before we computed our new variable. And note that this time I did not change this value from a 2 to a 1. We want to keep those at the 100th place, because when we average values together, they are often not integers, and we want to be as precise as we can. So just as a quick eye test, we're going to go to our data view. We're going to see that a 2 and a 2 averaged together is 2, a 4 and a 2 averaged together is a 3, a 2 and a 3 is 2.5, and so on and so forth. So there you have it. We have created our new construct of misogyny.